and the consumer, their preferences and their needs. And today I would like to tell you a bit about how we're trying to understand the consumers, what we're doing. But first and foremost, I would like to introduce and invite you to an ongoing activity in Work Package 6, which is the development of an innovation toolbox. But first, a brief overview. Work Package 6 consists of 6 primary activities with a bunch of deliverables from all of them. 2 of them are fully completed by now and have been presented before, so I'll just briefly tell you what it was. We had Kolding School of Design to look into a cultural, historical and design-oriented study of how we understand electricity and smart grid today. And among their key results was that at least the domestic uses, for them, electricity is invisible, intangible. It's even something very dangerous, an expert area guarded by danger signs and warning signs and stuff like that. So nobody really wants to touch or get into electricity. So their recommendation was to create a new language for electricity, which via design can increase energy awareness in our daily consumption routines. COVI conducted a rather extensive status preference investigation where they interviewed 1,000 respondents regarding their preferences and price sensitivity for indoor temperature variations. They found a top 3 of decision parameters where number 1 was the indoor temperature. We don't want to freeze to death to save the environment or save money. Next it was monthly costs, and finally the environment turned out to be of great importance. What they found was that up to 2 degrees temperature variations in domestic homes would be accepted without much consideration or even much reimbursement according to their analysis. Right. We have still one active PhD at Aalborg University, their Institute of Planning. Sophie is looking very detailed into an investigation of the possible roles of end users, focusing on the heat pump and how that may be utilized for demand management, especially fluid to water heat pumps. She has a lot of interesting insights, among others a very detailed historical uncovery of the development of heat pumps in Denmark, and not least the development of the public perception of heat pumps, which practically has gone from being the ugly duckling and into the white swan these days, where it's run by sustainable energy in the mix. Then we have this toolbox to support innovation and business development. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And we have 2 more active tasks. The first is a PhD on smart grid innovation, especially focusing on intelligent homes and consumption practices related to smart home systems. And this PhD is working together with Insero in their Live Lab and Kamstrup, the former Saseco, and their e-butler system, which is installed and tested in Insero's Live Lab. Mike will tell you a bit about the preliminary results from this summer. We have Thomas from Insero to introduce the Live Lab, and Mike will give you some of the preliminary results following my presentation today. But I would like to talk about the Innovation Toolbox. Because, the question asked to Work Package 6 when we started this project was, or actually it was rather like an order, just make sure the residential domestic users accept our solutions. That's all we ask of you. That's a pretty big task. So we are kind of trying to decompose that task into a series of sub-questions we provide some answers to in this toolbox. Anyway, the objective is to develop knowledge-based, help-yourself innovation tools. It will be method and process-oriented, but based on the knowledge gained in this project. And these tools will be available free of charge, and we hope they will enable Danish companies to develop better and more user-oriented smart grid solutions for the private consumers. The target group we have identified for these tools is, well, Danish or international companies developing smart home technologies. It will be the technology cases we will take up is heat pumps and smart home systems, because that's practically what we know something about, but the tools will be generally applicable to other technologies. And of course, we would also like to provide these tools for future aggregators, whoever intend to take up that task here in Denmark. So what's the outcome of this activity? Well, we will provide a series of innovation tools. They will be research-based, provide insights about the consumers. They will provide inspiration to trigger innovative ideas in your early innovation activities, and presumably also more strategically oriented innovation activities. And they will be formatted as these workbook or guidebook publications for download via web or for print. Right, as I said, we're looking to help companies ask and answer the right questions instead of just asking how do we make sure the consumers accept our solutions. And we've outlined 6 of these questions. The first one being, which smart grid future is relevant for your company to prepare for? Now, none of us can really tell the future, but based on interviews with practically all the iPower participants, we have provided a framework in which the future adoption of smart grid in Denmark may take place. And this framework is quite useful for testing the viability of your own solutions against these futures. Now, the second question is, what is it actually for some uses and not at least user preferences your products or services could meet out there? The third one, how can the entire customer journey of your smart grid products or services be improved, all the way from the awareness of the existence of your technology over acquisition, use, perhaps remote control, and maybe even disposal. And as David Hill told us, the value proposition of demand response for the domestic consumer is maybe not very interesting. So we're actually developing a tool to look into how you can improve the value proposition and align your business model to support that. Last but not least, we're looking into communication interfaces, both graphical and non-graphical, and how the aggregator can communicate with the end user. And our PhD Maiken and her supervisor Mads Borup from DTU Management has already uncovered what other smart grid R&D projects have studied about domestic consumers and what they've learned from it. So there's a report available about that already. Right. I presented this last fall, so I won't spend too much time on these strategic scenarios, but to those of you who haven't heard about it, what we did in brief was to ask all the iPower participants what are the key determining factors for the future adoption of smart grid in Denmark, and not least the development of a market of flexibility services. And they found a whole range of drivers and supporters, the green ones up here, as well as competitors to flexibility services and delayers of this development. And a team consisting of several iPower partners sort of analyzed all these factors, and this one stopped working. Ah, there it is. And we ended up with this classical scenario framework where we have the horizontal axis spanning the challenges that will be created, which smart grid may contribute to solve. It's in this axis we look into the integration of renewables in the grid and the electrification of the demand side. The vertical axis is an expression of how smart or conventional we may choose to solve those challenges. And this kind of gives us 4 scenarios that I won't talk about now, but in short, it will allow you to take your products and services and test it against these possible futures we may be headed towards. Right, the personas, very briefly, it's kind of an aggregated look into all the users and user preferences that selected smart grid projects have found. So we present this using a classical personas tool, but we also sort of make some estimates of how, for instance, how realistic it is to meet this lead technologist who hacks and develops your technologies out there, because he's very overrepresented in many of the demonstration projects. Right. So this is a tool that will help you, give you an insight about what preferences do the users have and needs, and it will also allow you to quickly test your new solutions against these potential end users out there. The customer journey tool, as I mentioned, it's a mapping of all positive and negative experiences a consumer may have throughout the entire journey, from awareness of your technology over consideration to invest, purchase, use, remote control, and perhaps disposal. So for instance, for the heat pump, we see some positive and negative experiences in that journey, and in this tool we will provide inspiration for how you can improve these positive and negative experiences with the technologies you provide. Now, as David also told us this morning, I was very inspired by your talk, David. He told us that in the domestic segment, going to a consumer and say, hey, you have a fridge, you can save maybe 2 kroners a year if I can remote control this fridge. That's not so interesting. So you probably have to, at least this is one of our theories, you have to layer value propositions from a range of technologies and combination of technologies into systems consisting or making this smart home the melting pot of all these different technologies and areas that provide some sort of value to the end consumer. This is from our PhD, Sofie Nyborg, one of her early articles. And in short, it's a mapping of all the different smart home approaches that are out there. In iPower, we've mostly looked into demand management, home systems management, but in fact, we see a whole lot of examples of, the Nest thermostat. But apart from energy management, we also see the safe and secure home, looking into locks of doors and windows. Nest has just launched an intelligent smoke alarm. We also see the home entertainment system, perhaps led by Apple, Google. We see Sonos and systems like that connecting all your entertainment devices. We see a whole lot of remote health systems by now, and actually the entertainment systems are also moving into this sector of the intelligent welfare or intelligent health home. Demand management systems, there are a few of them for domestic end users out there, primarily in the US. And surprisingly, we see some very interesting cases of automation of household chores. So at the CES 2011, LG launched a robot vacuum cleaner that are able to feed your dog if you can't make it home. What a value proposition. Anyway, this is just examples of the cases we're looking into to find some inspiration for you to develop new products, and we're making this case bank in this value proposition model tool. I'm running out of time, so again, we are looking into interfaces, and we will provide a graphical guide with a review of some of these interfaces, recommendations for what you can do to design new ones, and we have this Smart Grid project survey that are available at Podio now, or if you contact me, you can learn what other projects have already studied about domestic consumers. Anyway.
Actually, we are trying to solve the noise problem.
Okay. Yeah. Shut him off. But please, we're testing all of these tools during the first 4 months of 2015. So if you wish to take part in this, it's all free. Give me a calling card or send me an email, and I would very much like to hear from you. That's probably my main message today. So please grab hold of me.